Hello, hello, hello. This is Christina Barr with Black Tea News, and today I want to talk about the recounts going on, but specifically, I want to go back all the way back to 2016 and talk about my personal experience with doing recounts. Really quickly, if you guys like what I do, I would ask that you please visit blacktnews.com, leave your email address, sign up for like your newsletter, but also, consider leaving a donation, consider looking at some of the things we have for sale. I'm still making products, but please get that and trigger someone today. But yeah, if you like what I do and you like to see it kind of expand some more, please consider supporting. But for I see some people jumping on. So there's a lot of recounts going on, not a lot, but they're talking about the one and doing one in Wisconsin, which there was all this chatter last night on Twitter because an election official spoke up when I guess they tried to kind of change some of the rules, and he became a bit of a folk hero last night. And then we talked yesterday about some of the intimidation that was going on in Wayne County with at the board of canvassers and the two Republicans who said, "Hey, we can certify these results, but there's some things in Wayne County in Detroit we want to look at." And then the Democrats started threatening them, calling them racist. And I talked about this with Linda Lee Tarver, who worked for the Secretary of State for a long time, which and she said, and this is her experience, and just a reminder for those who didn't watch it, she's African American, that there was a lot of things that she's seen over the years out of that particular city with elections that needed to kind of be handled, but they were never quite handled in the appropriate way because people would start screaming racism. And she told me this, like, I'm not like on the fraud train as much as like maybe some other people would be. So what after I heard about some of the things going at TFC from people I know personally and there's a lot of people I know who were there who I know personally, some who I would be like maybe they were excited and missaw some stuff or just didn't understand some things, but then there are also some people who were there that I trust. And so they told me about some things that went on that were made me uncomfortable. So I called her and we had a conversation and to just kind of get some perspective. And I thought I would feel better after the conversation, and it felt worse. Because and it was almost prophetic because the way she was talking about you can't hold these people accountable, or they haven't been held accountable because they scream racism. And then we saw the board of canvassers saying they could have just like stuck to logic and facts and other stuff, but they were like, here's where your kids go to school, like for the world to know. When they look at the history books, they're gonna see that you're on the wrong side of history and you're a racist and blah blah, and like that's what they turn to. And another, she also did mention their issues with Chris Thomas when we were on the phone. And then I was at a press conference at the RNC, and they specifically mentioned that someone signed an affidavit saying that Chris Thomas told them to backdate ballots. So that's still all being discussed and worked out, and that's still allegedly still, but just it was pretty much she said she's not a prophetic or anything like that. She just kind of knows from how these things go from experience and could speak to them, and it was just eerily dead on. So that happened the other day. They rescinded their votes, signed affidavits talking about how they were threatened and bullied and stuff. I'm hearing kind of some mixed messages on whether that matters or not, because they said they would vote on the contingency that they would, look at some of these discrepancies. And then the Secretary of State was like, I don't have to do anything, which of course they don't, because if you vote, there goes the leverage. And so they rescinded it, but when that happened, I was like, I think it's kind of too late. So I'm kind of hearing a little back and forth on that. So I'm not 100% certain right now on whether it is something that they can take back right now. Hey, hi, people on the chat. Hey, I see Mitch. Yeah, Robin, thank you. So anyway, so people are talking about the election. I remember that when it was the anniversary of the day when Obama sat in the Oval Office with Trump, people were just like, oh, how come, Trump can't be like this? And they're reminiscing, saying, talking about how you won't just concede and all this other stuff, and how, I don't know, how dangerous our democracy is right now. And some people pointed out that, keep in mind at this time, that they were actually investigating the Trump campaign. They were like under surveillance. They went on with that Russian investigation and stuff later. They went on to do that, set up Michael Flynn afterwards. Joe Biden was the one who suggested using the Logan Act. Of course, they didn't do that, but the FBI people were like, hey, are we going to set them? Are we trying to get him fired? Or are we trying to basically set him up to get him to lie? And it's like, aren't you supposed to be looking for a crime if he committed a crime, instead of like trying to get him to commit a crime? So anyway, let's not pretend that the Democrats went quietly into the night. And there's some things with the Obamagate stuff that we know that wasn't exactly quite a peaceful transfer of power. Really, it looks like the former administration sabotaged the incoming administration so it could reinstall itself. Because you had Obama, Biden, and then they did all the stuff with Trump as he was going out. And then they went ahead and were like, Joe Biden wins. So it's really, really shady. But I want to talk about something else about the Democrats not going quietly into the night. And that's the 2016 election. And so if I could go back a little bit further, remember everyone was flipping out about Trump saying he won't accept the results of the election. And he was like, I have to look at, why would I waive my right to challenge if something shady goes on? And so as time went on, the Democrats seemed like really nervous about it in the media, and they just made it a really huge deal. And so eventually it just kind of even became like a joke to Trump. He was at one rally and he was like, I will concede. Or he said, I will accept the results of the election if I win. Or when I win. I can't remember which one it was. And he's like looking at the crowd. He just like kind of points to the camera and smiles. So at this point of time, he's just really trolling the media about it. And they're just so aghast at like everything he said. Like, remember when he said the joke about Russians, like, if you have her emails, then please like give it to us or something like that. And they're like, oh my gosh, he's colluding with the Russians because he said that. And it's like, no, it was a joke. So anyway, they said at the I think might have been the final debate, they asked again if Trump was, maybe it was the second debate. I remember Hillary Clinton was in a white suit. And they asked him again, would he concede? And he was like, I'm not gonna waive my right, to challenge or whatever. And Hillary Clinton, kind of said that she would, or no, I think she kind of dodged it a bit. So on the her airplane, a reporter asked her, would she be willing to accept the results of the election? And she just kind of laughs and smiles and says, I was horrified at what happened tonight at the debates. She just, and I was watching it, and like, people think that if you're a Trump person, you just watch like Fox News all the time. I actually had a job within the Michigan Republican Party, and I did like media stuff. I had to watch CNN. We never put it on Fox. It was on CNN all the time, because one, if you're just kind of listening to your own echo chamber, you don't know how the other side is thinking. So it was important for me doing my job that I needed to watch it. So, but they just kind of let that go. And I'm like, she didn't, I remember watching them just like, she did not answer that question about whether she would accept the results of the election. So of course, election night happened. Everyone's excited, I'm trolling a bit because just all the harassment from people you've had, and all of a sudden it's like you win. And so you're excited and everything. And we're all waiting for Hillary to come out. And of course she doesn't. And Podesta comes out, and then we were upset, and we were all waiting for something to happen. And they're like, we were at the office, and they're like, you guys got to go home because we don't know what's going to happen in the morning. And so of course Hillary conceded in the morning and so on. And so we believe we're going to start the whole transition, fine and whatnot. But then Jill Stein gets involved, and they decide to do a recount. So, of course, Jill Stein, Trump won by not like astronomically huge margins. I mean, in Michigan, it was like about 10,000 votes. But to me, that seems like really big for a recount, in my opinion. And that was my held opinion at the time, because I myself had done a recount for myself. And I ran for state representation. It was a primary race. I didn't have them recount all the counties because we had to pay for it ourselves. And actually, my dad was like insisting. He's like, "I want to do this for you." And I'm like, "We could just let it go." And like, it sucks to lose, but we could let it go. He's like, "I want to do this for you." I'm like, "Okay, Dad, you could have just like give me the money or something." But okay, we'll do the recount. Because I just didn't want to go like emotionally really go through bother going through it. So anyway, we did the recount. I was only there for a little bit because I actually had to go to work. So my family was like there with some friends trying to, going through the ballots and stuff. But we couldn't even find, and I lost by 6 votes, and we couldn't even find that many to overturn anything. Now there was like a precinct, I think, or two that we could not recount because the numbers didn't quite match. And if the numbers don't match, at least in Michigan, with the, I think the amount of ballots in there in the poll book or something, then you can't recount it. Which we were like, that's shady, but it just was what it was at the time, because we thought if anywhere, maybe we could pick up ballots there. And anyway, I just didn't have the opinion that they were going to be able to find that many votes. And they certainly were going to be able to find that many votes for Jill Stein, because she only got not even maybe 2% of the vote, or 2% of the vote. So Linda Lee talked about this a little bit yesterday about how the board of canvassers were asked by apparently Chris Thomas to pre-approve her application, and alleged a couple things in there. And they went ahead and did it. And when they got the application, it wasn't what exactly they thought it was supposed to be, and they tried to renege on it, and they're like, no, it's too late, it's already gone through. And so we started the recount. And I remember it happened pretty suddenly. But let me back up a little bit. When we found out that we were gonna have to do the recount, when people who work in elections, when elections are over, like some people go and they work on transition teams or whatever, but I was ready to have vacation. Okay. It was like nonstop work. Like a lot of my family got to meet like the Trump kids or the Trump people, and I never could, because I was in my office making videos all the time, and my videos did really well, and it was just nonstop work for me. And so it was like, okay, now I'm gonna get a break. And so I couldn't get a break because I had to go do the recount stuff. And so even before we start recounting ballots, I had to make a video. For the Michigan Republican Party, I was the creative director. So another thing, that night with the election, with all the talk of, oh, will Trump concede? They struck a deal with the Hillary Clinton camp and said, when AP calls the race, the loser will call within like 15 minutes and concede. And Trump and his team went ahead along with that deal. So all the hysteria that the media had about Trump conceding, they've struck a deal. If he would have lost, he planned to concede that night. At least that is what the deal that they made. And I'm pretty sure that he probably wouldn't have went along with it that night. Now, you might be asking, why isn't he conceding right now? Because everyone did all this shady stuff basically in front of his face. He knows that people investigated him and said all these things that he did not do for the past 4 years. So he's a bit paranoid, and I think rightly so. So no, he wasn't gonna just rightly just go along with it. I think a lot of people probably are pressuring him and have pressured him to just maybe concede and go on. But I think there's some things worth investigating. So anyway, we went ahead and we started preparing for the recount, and it happened pretty abruptly when we had to start. Like it had to start like in Lansing at like 5:00 or something, or 3:00. And it was like in the afternoon. I'm like, why don't they just do it the next day? It was like abrupt. And so we started the recount. And so you'd have people who were representing, and Hillary Clinton jumped on the thing too. So it seemed like she was just kind of, and she didn't have the money for the recount. And she's not within like a margin where the state would have to pay for it. So whoever did it, of course, Jill Stein raised the money to do it, but it just kind of seemed like the back door to which Hillary could do the recount. So everybody had representation. There's people there for Hillary. There's people there for Jill Stein. There's people there for Trump. And we God bless, we had a bunch of volunteers that decided to help out with that. And so we'd sit at a table, and there'd be representation from everyone, and we go through the precincts, and we count how many were there, and we go through the ballots and check them if there was like any irregularities or whatever, we could challenge the ballots, and we get our lawyers over, look at stuff, and they set it aside. And basically at the end of the night, we go through the ballots that had issues, and so and decide where they're going to go for this person or that person to be invalidated or whatever. So I was in Lansing for the first night, and then I ended up being sent to the west side of the state. And it went pretty smoothly, and we counted pretty fast. So while we're all working for the recount, we had our attorney general at the time who was working to get the whole thing thrown out, because why is someone who absolutely could not win contesting the results of the election? And when Jill Stein would go on the media, people, because they started already dropping this like Russia collusion thing in there, which according to like investigations and stuff, at least with the Republicans, and when they were investigating, that seemed like Hillary Clinton was the one who kind of decided to birth this rumor, and it went on from there. And it was getting some traction in the media, and people on the internet and Twitter and all this other stuff. And so people were like saying, were the machines hacked? And so Jill Stein, when they would press her, she would say, I'm not saying that the machines were hacked. I'm just saying there are, some numbers that are questionable, because there were people who would go and did not vote for the president because they just didn't trust either one of them. So there's maybe an unusual amount of this compared to like other elections. So anyway, but it still wasn't. I was annoyed the whole time, because I'm like, they're not going to find 10,000 votes to change this election, and they're definitely not going to. She can't possibly win. So everyone there who's like working for the Trump side has the attitude of, I am here right now to save democracy. Like, it was so serious to all of us, because we felt like these people were trying to like steal the victory. And the people who were like the workers there, who were like from the county, like they didn't want anyone to wear like any Trump gear or anything like that. And they did give us like particular hats to like kind of identify ourselves. I'm like, it personally, like I was like, okay, we don't want to make anything difficult for the clerks or anything like that. So we just kind of tried to, we knew who we were, I guess. So and so I kind of was like the head point of where I was in my county where we worked out of. And so because like I said, we were very focused on trying to save democracy. The other people who came to volunteer for like Jill Stein and Hillary, just kind of like, oh, I'm here because blah blah blah. Like I would be kind of frustrated, because I'm watching them sit at a table, and the Trump people, like their eyes are like glued to the ballots as they're counting them, to make sure the count is right, to make sure the ballots look good. And the other people are just kind of looking around like, oh, what a lovely day. Someone just told me to be here. And I'm like, why are you even here if it's not this important to you? Why are you guys putting us through all of this trouble? I don't know, election integrity, Republicans, they're really intense. Like the Democrats try to say, oh, people want a voter ID because Republicans are racist. I'm like, first of all, that's really racist to assume minorities or brown people can't get IDs. They get IDs to drive, to drink, we have identification. We know where the Secretary of State is. It is not that hard to get identification. So it doesn't really make sense that we can't pull out our IDs and show who we are in order to vote. The thing about like voter ID is like, we want to make sure that votes are valid and there isn't any fraud, because when you have someone else whose vote puts it in and votes against someone who is a legitimate voter, you're invalidating real votes by bringing in all this like fake. So I want elections to be free, and I want them to be fair, and I want them to be valid. So in at our own conventions, like we're pretty sticklers on like the ID too. It's like, okay, I know you, and you left your ID in the car, go get it. Oh, So I mean, they're sticklers at their own conventions. It's really nothing to do with race, and it's really silly. And race is when Democrats try to bring that up as an excuse. So anyway, we're pretty intense about trying to save our democracy, but everyone's pretty friendly to each other, getting along pretty much with the Jill Stein people and Hillary people and so on. So we go through our first county pretty quickly, and we get like another one that's sent to, and it's interesting watching the ballots and everything come, because like what they put them in, like what kind of cases they put them in from county to county is so different. Because like, I mean, it was like, I don't know, these kind of bags or whatever were like sealed up and stuff, like in Ingham versus like, when I was on the west side of the state, they ended up sending in like ballots that were in these steel barrels. And I'm like, what is going on here? It was just strange. And then to see a ballot that was different than a ballot that you have. Like, I didn't realize that the ballots were, I mean, obviously people's names are different from county to county and so on, but it was odd seeing like, I mean, some were like fill in the bubbles and some were like fill in the square. Like I didn't know it would be that kind of different from county to county, and different counties use different voting machines, and it's just really a diverse process, I suppose. So I just didn't realize it was that, I guess, unique across county lines. So the recount ended up stopping because of the attorney general prevailed, and so we ended up stopping the recount. And so and it was funny, like when we get a challenge and stuff, like there's one particular challenge that they wanted to make. I didn't make the challenge. It was somebody else who decided we're going to challenge this ballot and it was when I looked at it, I thought it was a Democrat vote or whatever. Like, we'll challenge it. I'm just like, it's a okay, whatever. And so the Jill, I can't remember if it was Jill Stein or the Hillary person. I think it was a Jill Stein person, and they were just like, they had like prepared a speech on this ballot. And so at the end of the night, when they're like, okay, we get to this ballot, and I'm just like, I wave it, and they're just like, like, I had this whole thing prepared. I'm like, yeah, I withdraw it. Like, I agree with you. And so I think they were surprised by that, and they saw that I was a rational person, even though I voted for Trump. That I was and I say that because eventually they did ask me, which I guess there was like maybe a lawyer or something that was there that they heard wasn't really Republican, but they were there to do a job, which people do. And so they wanted to know if I actually was a Republican. And they said it was because another person was there just to work. And I'm gonna make the assumption also because I'm Black. They asked that question too. And so I'm like, yes, I'm a Republican. I believe in those, tenets that the Republican Party believes in, and so on. And they once I told them what I did, that I was a creative director, I make all the videos and the graphics and stuff like that, they were actually thought my job was pretty cool. And they were like, oh, that's good for you. That's good for you. So after it was all over, they, we were respectful of each other's space. We were respectful of each other. We were respectful when there was food coming in and letting just all the arrangements. I can't speak to everyone else's experience, but we had a pretty chill experience. And so when it was all over, they were just kind of like, I think this was the Hillary person who said this. So like, this was like a lot, better than I thought it was going to be. Like, I was kind of dreading it. And so how he said it, just I made the assumption that like, because he was going to be in a room with a bunch of Trump people for a couple of days, that maybe he just assumed we were nutty or something. And so I was just like, I don't really like that. I don't really like that. I'm like, we're all just, we're all just people. We're all just people, sticking up and standing and fighting for what we believe in. And so after they all cleared out the ballots and stuff, we actually stayed and we talked for a while and had pretty interesting conversations. So I was the only female there representing out of the three client, Trump, uh, Jill Stein and Hillary. The other two were men, and they had friends that were with them. And so I was the only female left in the room. And so we started talking about Trump's Hollywood access tape. And everyone agreed that it was locker room talk. But I was the only one who acknowledged that that's not my normal verbiage. All of them were like, yeah, we talk like that. Yeah, we talk like that. And I believe in all of them, were well, it was pretty opposite. They were gay men, and they said, "Yeah, we talk like that." Actually, one of them was there with their boyfriend, and so they were really nice. They were nice guys. It was a really cordial time and everything like that. But they all acknowledged that they talk like that, and they believe Trump's Hollywood access tape was locker room talk. And I was the only one who was like, I don't normally have those kinds of conversations or anything. That's not like my verbiage, but I do believe it was locker room talk. And so it was such a huge story and such a huge controversy. And I was the only one who acknowledged that wasn't like part of my daily lives and routine, but everyone just at heart believed it wasn't that big of a deal, I suppose. Like, obviously when it's on TV and blaring everywhere and in ads and everything, yeah, it's a big deal for something to come out like in a campaign. But it's funny when you talk to people who are like volunteers or people who are like just tweeting and people who actually work on like campaign trails and stuff. It's just kind of like it hurts to lose because you worked hard. But other than that, it's like, oh yeah, we lost one and we're gonna try next time. Now there's some people who have like kind of more malicious attitudes, I suppose, for how they're going to win next time. But as far as my conversation with them, like it was just like that sucks for us. It hurt us, but everyone just kind of had we will move on with our lives and we'll try to work the next time. And so they all agreed that Hollywood access tape was locker room talk. And I also mentioned that Deadpool was like the #1 movie in America at the time. So everyone kind of feigning like they were at Trump's language and stuff. It was a bit of I understand the reaction, but some people were like really kind of doing the most. I suppose is the best way I could put it, especially knowing that the kind of conversations I got from hatred from people for supporting Trump, and then they would say such derogatory terms at me, like he hates women and he's a sexist, and then they would say such awful vulgar things to me. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? I mean, at least some of the stuff he says is like private conversations, and you're like trying to say these sexual things to me on Facebook. And then they say something like, I'm not running for president. I'm like, okay, people basically get what they deserve. That's why a lot of people were able to let it go, because they know how a lot of people actually are. So I just couldn't understand why people thought it was a license to be so awful to one another. But anyway, we also talked about abortion, and I was the only one who was pro-life, and they were all guys. And so it's just so funny because the left, you'll hear like left with women or even men will be like, don't, if you don't have a uterus, you don't have an opinion or whatever. And I'm the only one who's there, who's a female, who's like, no, I believe that the child has a right to life. And so that was an interesting conversation. And I just remember one of them was just like, well, I believe in a woman's right to choose. I'm like, well, I believe in they have choices. I just don't want them to, kill a child when I believe that life starts at conception. So, and then one of them also believed that if Hillary Clinton wasn't married to Bill, that she would have pulled it off, which I thought was interesting because I'm like, would people even know who she was if she wasn't married to Bill Clinton? Because I mean, her being the first lady launched her off, and they have an arrangement, obviously. And I do believe the Bill stuff dragged her down, but she made her own issues and mistakes. As a matter of fact, I think if she wasn't Obama's Secretary of State and had the opportunity to do, the higher profile of being Secretary of State, I mean, gave her more credibility as far as her qualifications, I suppose, but there was a lot of things that she did in that role that made people uncomfortable with her. So maybe if she didn't even take on that position and we couldn't have hammered her on Benghazi and stuff like that, she probably, just as a senator and former first lady, she probably would have been in a better position to win, honestly. Um, because she gave her a lot of opportunities to really make herself unlikable and shoot herself in the foot. And I don't understand why so many people are like upset about Benghazi and thought that was shady, but they shift so much blame solely to like Hillary Clinton and not so much to Obama. Like Obama always had like plausible deniability when stuff would happen, but it seems like obviously his policies were unpopular and Republicans gained so much ground when he was president across the country. And but he like himself, it never like dampened his popularity that much. And no one ever like I mean I know there was the jokes like thanks Obama, like and stuff like that, but like it just seemed like at large, especially when Hillary Clinton was running, like people, and maybe it was part of Obama, like he started this campaign about how he didn't have any scandals and stuff. And even at the time when things were reported while he was president, the press did refer to certain things as scandals, like the NSA spying and spying on the AP reporters and spying on the Fox News reporters. And that the attack of the press was probably the thing they were flipping out. Predictably, they freaked out the most about because it was about them. But it just seems like that Hillary just got a lot of more vitriol for things that obviously she must have been ordered to take the heat for. I mean, I would assume as far as some of like the Benghazi choices and stuff, like, because why would she take it upon herself to make that story about the video? And even if she did come up with the idea, um, that's not something that she could authorize for the talking points that went out for a while before, it kind of got revealed that it wasn't. So it's interesting that, I mean, I believe that she deserves the shade, don't get me wrong, but it's interesting that Obama just doesn't get more of it. So I anyway, I thought it was interesting, and I kind of laughed at him a bit when he said, like, I just know if she wasn't married to Bill Clinton, she'd be the president right now. It was a really interesting opinion. But overall, I thought the guys are pretty nice and we had very cordial time together, but I wasn't expecting to not have a cordial time. They were expecting, I guess, the worst deal of being stuck in a room with Trump supporters for a while. And everyone was respectful. And we were there to do a job, and and we did it. But on the east side of the state, they had all kinds of issues in Detroit. They kept bringing out, the ballots and stuff to count, but then they could not count them because there were so many precincts that had off numbers. So they could not recount certain things because they weren't balanced properly. And I believe I did write about this on Black Teen News when I talked about an article I wrote about Janice Runafree. So off the top of my head, I believe it was 37% of the precincts that they were recounting could not be recounted because they were off. And people were it seemed like they were kind of slowing up bringing out stuff because I think they were pretty embarrassed by how many things were off. I just heard so many horror stories from people who were there. I don't know why I wasn't sent to that side of the state, because I had a place in Lansing, but I also had a place on the east side of the state. Instead, I drove out to the west side of the state. But I don't know, maybe it was the Lord. I had a nice little time on my side of the state, but it was craziness with all the mismatching stuff that was going on in Wayne County. And so they said people were starting to kind of bring out stuff kind of slow, I think because they were embarrassed, and they're probably happy that the recount ended early because there was just such shenanigans going on with how disproportionate things were. So they did end up having to do like an audit and everything later that Secretary of State Ruth Johnson decided to do. And after Janice Winfrey's performance and stuff, Gilchrist, who's the lieutenant governor in Michigan right now, he ran against her. And my sister lived in Detroit at the time, and not a lot of Republicans are going to Detroit. So she actually did a vote crossover so she could vote for him, because hoping to get her out because she did such a poor job, but she's still there as the clerk of Detroit. And I don't know why they did that to themselves, but she's still there. I guess they decided she deserved a second and a third and a fourth chance. So she's still there. Yeah, so they had all kinds of crazy stories, and I remember being in Republican meetings afterwards, and they were reporting just all of the madness that they kind of saw from the recount there, and everyone was really shocked at how imbalanced and stuff the books were. It was really bad in 2016. I'm not hearing that is a big of an issue, but right now we do know that there are some imbalanced precincts right now, and I guess that's why some of the canvassers said that they didn't want to go ahead and vote, and they wanted the Secretary of State to go ahead and audit it, but it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I don't know if they really can recount their vote like that. Just thinking back to when they tried to stop the recount after the board, said okay, and then they tried to recant it, and they're like, no, it's too late. So I think that's the thing that the main board will have to kind of go through, or kind of take it another issue to be dealt with through the courts. Now, and I do want to say that I don't know what the end all be all is going to be in Detroit, but there are a lot of people afraid that all of their votes are going to be thrown out. And I personally, I wouldn't like that. I want to make sure that the absentee ballots that came through and I think those things should be checked, because I did hear a lot of disturbing things. But it's people who came and they voted and they did their civic duty. I want to make sure that those people, their voices are heard one way or another. And so I want all this to get resolved in the courts, and well, not that I need everything to get resolved in the court. I guess it's going there one way or another with stuff, with a lot of allegations. I just want to come to the fairest outcome for everyone. But I do think it's interesting that how many people are like, don't invalidate my vote and stuff. And I don't want anyone's vote to be invalidated if they're a true legal vote. But I remember, and I haven't talked for an hour yet, so I'm going to go ahead and tell the story a little bit, and maybe I'll go into more detail later. But I was there at the electors when they did the electors in Michigan. And I did try to be an elector, and when we had the vote, I kind of shot myself in the foot when we did the voting, because my district, we vote for a notoriously long time, so we just wanted like whoever had the majority to win. But if we would have went to whoever had the most votes out of the people who were running, and if we would have had like a runoff ballot between the top two, I probably would have won and been an elector. So I'm the one who like voted for the rule change, so I can't be too upset about it. But there were so many letters coming from people across the country begging, and even in some cases threatening people. My friend Mike Benarian was threatened by people, just a lot of people from California, the East Coast, areas of the country, writing, begging people to be faithless electors. So I think it's probably for the best that I wasn't selected, because I think it would have flipped out my family a bit, seeing all that stuff come to my house, and it would probably made them uncomfortable. So anyway, I was there that day when we had the ceremony, and my family was invited. Linda Lee, who was on my program last night, she was there. Her husband was there, and other friends and activists that we knew were there. And when my dad came to the Capitol, there were protesters there. And from my memory, everybody there who was protesting was white. There was more diversity inside on the Republican side than people who were outside. So they were puzzled when a black guy just kind of walks through with his family, and he's walking through marching, just going, "God bless Trump." God bless Trump. Just and they're just looking so puzzled and confused because this black man is saying God bless Trump. So he goes through them and goes inside with the Capitol with my family, and I'm like recording it, video recording it as it's all going down, and me and like other minorities who like work for the party or just there on behalf of the party or invited by them are just kind of looking at all these people as they came into my dad is brave, you said in a comment. Yeah, he does not care about people doing, you know, what they say, how they come against him. He's you know, even when people call him square, he'd say I'm super square. And he's just never been the type of guy to care about that kind of stuff, and will boldly, you know, pronounce his faith, will boldly say his political views. You know, he's a pastor, a missionary. You know, he would drive past an Al Qaeda camps to get to church in Pakistan. Um, you know, he would do whatever he felt that he needed to do. So yeah, going marching through protest or saying God bless Trump, yeah, my dad did not care, and I suppose he wanted to trigger them a bit, but he did mean that. He's God bless Trump. He felt like God was really calling him to pray for Trump for a lot of reasons. So anyway, so we're seeing all these people as they storm inside, and they're upset when we close the doors. It's like, you guys are kind of loud, and we're trying to, you know, do this thing. And they start singing like "We Shall Overcome," and they're butchering the song, the poor song. They're butchering it. They're saying like no fascist, racist, KKK in the USA or something like that. They Trump being anti-gay or something like that. I don't remember the full chant, but it's along those lines. There's all the isms kind of in there. And so I just had a thought to myself. I'm like, I worked very hard for this outcome. Like, I know a lot of people are upset because other people, well, Hillary's team made a lot of mistakes and they really didn't work as hard as they should have in Michigan. And but we worked really hard for the outcome. And there was quite a few minorities, and there were minorities who were electors. There was a black woman and her father that were electors. My friend Mike Benarian, he's Armenian, and you had Hispanic, you had young people, you had older people who were there as electors. It was a pretty diverse group of people out of the you know, the people who were casting them. And I'm thinking about all the people who's in the room and all these people who are out there cheering, begging, practically crying. Maybe some of them were crying, and all these letters that poured in from all these elitist places. I'm like, they're begging me to like invalidate my vote for the outcome that I fought for what, and I did what I felt was best for my family, for my friends, for the things that I believe in with supporting the president. And at the time, he was a risk to a lot of people, and he was a gamble. And I think that he really exceeded my expectations. So I'm really proud of the vote that I had at the time. Not always like happy with some of his actions, uh, but you know, sometimes his tweets make me laugh. Sometimes they make me cringe. I So I don't like follow his tweets. When people say, "Did you see what Trump tweeted?" I'm like, "What? What did he do?" And sometimes I LOL, and sometimes I'm like, "Oh, I wish you could have kept that one." But I watching all these people freak out like they were the ones fighting for me. It's like, you don't even care what I believe. You don't even care what I think. You don't care at all about me or my family or my friends, or, you know, it just kind of made me, I don't know, a bit cynical about people, I suppose, because there's so many people saying that they're fighting for us, and they believe a certain way, that they're doing the right thing for the other, as Dave Rubin would say, that so many, they believe that the liberal position was to fight for the other. But and he's no longer he considers himself a classical liberal, and he kind of left the left, or the left left him, or whatever. But it's like, they don't really believe in protecting the other, because, or the minorities, or, you know, the women, or blacks, or Hispanics, and so on, because if you don't believe and you don't line up with what they say you're supposed to, then they don't care about you. They are I met people who were offended that when you step outside of the box. So they were just full of crap. Singing we shall butchering poor, we shall overcome. And I'm like, there's more black people in here who support the president than you guys out there who are saying that we shouldn't cast this vote after the will of Michigan decided that we wanted Trump. And it was only 10,000 votes different, but that's what the state decided. That's the will of the people. And I fought hard for the outcome and for all of these people, not even in Michigan, trying to say that my vote shouldn't matter or the will of Michigan should matter or we shouldn't have all these electors the number that we had because the population in California is so much bigger than ours and you want to wash out my vote. that that's not cool. That wasn't cool. So um yeah, so and that's how I feel about like people who want to get rid of the electoral college. My um representative congresswoman is Brenda Lawrence, and she's a Democrat and she doesn't believe in the electoral college. It's kind of a weird saying that I don't believe in it. It exists. What are you going to do? It is older than you are. Um but she said she believes we should get rid of it. And I'm like, I think anyone who says that from a state that's like not in like California or somewhere else where the or New York where the population is so big should not even, why are you even representing people, your people? Because what you're saying is you would like to weaken the power of Michigan. That's what you're saying when you say I think we should get rid of the electoral college and everybody should just do one person, one vote. Because we're not set up to be a, a pure democracy in that way. We're representative Republican. That's not the way it was set up. I'm glad it's not the way that it's set up, but you're supposed to, as a congressperson, you're supposed to go out there and fight for your constituents. And what you're saying is, and granted, her particular section is like they put a lot of the Democrats in her particular um section. As a matter of fact, a lot of we had on the ballot in 2018, they had a gerrymandering kind of proposal, or they were claiming they wanted to do a panel to get rid of gerrymandering, and a lot of Republicans didn't understand all the things that were going on in the vote. Because a lot of Republicans voted for it. I think got like 70% even more on that when it passed. They had like excellent like mailers and stuff, kept it really simple and lied their little tails off about it with the panel and stuff. But there were Republicans who thought when they're going to break up gerrymandered districts, they thought it was meant like districts like mine in 14 wouldn't be so heavily Democrat, is what they thought was going to happen. But no. So granted, there's a lot of Democrats that obviously did not vote for Trump in her district, but the will of the Michigan people was to vote for Trump. He won the popular vote in Michigan. So the fact that someone would say, I don't think we should have the electoral college and all of these other people from other states should be able to overwhelm the voice of Michigan. I can understand if you live from another side of the state or whatever, or sometimes you want to throw a hissy fit because you didn't get the outcome that you wanted. But it's like, no, we should respect the electoral college. And if you're an elected official in the state of Michigan, I think that's what you should fight for, to keep and make sure that you have a voice for your people. Like it drives me kind of crazy that someone like Bernie Sanders who says we should get rid of the electoral college. I'm like, you want to get rid of like the 3 votes that you have in Vermont, like, and make them like totally useless? As a senator, how can you say that? How could you do that to your people? You only have 3 to fight for it. Fight for your little 3 votes. So yeah. So the Democrats are full of it. So I suppose that kind of sums up the whole my experience with the recount and stuff. So I mean, when they finished it through the court, it stopped and we got to stop, and we were happy to, we were saying winning so nice, we get to win twice, because we stopped the recount. And obviously, Trump was inaugurated, and I got to go to the inaugural ball and all that other stuff. And I wrote about that a little bit of my experience in the Detroit News. because there were protesters that day. Um, so when people say that Trump brought the riots or something like that, it's like, no, y'all been rioting like the whole time when you guys don't get your way. So maybe I can talk about that another day. But I'm not sure what's going to happen with the recounts going on. I suppose I started all this to say, um, in Georgia they did find some votes because some people didn't upload like a memory card, and this happened, I believe, they found votes twice. There was a third time, but I don't think it was reported exactly the way, like it didn't change the percentage for some reason. So, but there was like the first time I heard it, it actually they found a couple thousand votes, and it was like a net gain of 800 votes for Trump. Now, is 800 going to change the outcome of the election? Of course not. But there are human errors in elections, and there is fraud sometimes. Is fraud rampant or widespread? It doesn't need to be widespread. It needs to, if it's targeted in a couple of areas, it can make the difference of an election. Um so the question is, and even if you find some, don't you want to find out and make sure it doesn't happen again? I think that's pretty important to do that. So the media is kind of asking the wrong questions, in my opinion, about some of this stuff, because they don't want to find out anything. They like the outcome that they had. But to me, finding 800 votes like that first time I heard it like that, that was, to me, that sounded like a pretty significant jump for a recount. Like Scott Walker mentioned when Trump wanted to do the recount in Wisconsin, he's like, we had a recount for the Supreme Court and we couldn't, and it was, that race was super tight and they couldn't even like but find enough votes to make a difference there. So he thinks a recount in Wisconsin, I think it was silly. But when I heard about the 800 in Georgia, I'm like, that is like, I mean, human errors happen, I suppose, but that was finding like 800 votes. And you have to understand, like, there's other people on the ballot besides Joe Biden and Trump. So there were some mistakes and stuff that people had or made or whatever, that people went to sleep thinking they lost and they woke up and found out that they won because there were some errors in some places here and there across the country. So it's really vitally important that these things are done to people, the best of people's abilities, and that, they canvas and then they audit sometimes. And but I think one reason why just to go back on why won't the president concede, they did a lot of things in front of his face that probably would justify his opinion. I mean, they changed all the things with to justify with the COVID, with the mail and stuff, and the media try to be cute with it and act like mail-in and absentee weren't that different. But absentee, you request the ballot, or I mean, when you get a certain age, I believe it's sent to you automatically or whatever. But if you need one, you request it. Mail-in is just like blanket sent to everybody. In Michigan, we had so many. I'm sure this happened all across the country. I mean, someone got a ballot for their dead cat, but in Michigan, I had a ballot that was sent to my house with someone who's no longer registered in the state to vote. There's people who sent ballots for people who didn't live there anymore. There are people who sent, not ballots, but their applications for ballots for people who had passed away. And our former Secretary of State mentioned that, one, it's a big waste of money to do that. And so why would the cost? It seemed kind of political, and it was just an odd thing to do in general. But they could have just allowed people to request their absentee ballots, as opposed to, because was there blanket fraud with these? That's something that I suppose they have to investigate and prove. But the president was always mentioning that the potential was there, and to pretend that you getting a ballot and you signing it, and sending it back so you get an application so you can get a real ballot, that's not an issue. It is an issue because someone has a potential to do something like that. Why would you open that door, especially when your job is is part of it is election security. So to open that door for that potential gateway was not wise, unless you are kind of trying to open up some kind of floodgate. So and I don't know if this was the case so much in Michigan, but in in other states, you hear about lowering like the standards, I suppose, with the signature verification and matching and going through. So why would you do that, other than you want to make sure that more votes that wouldn't normally come through and would get blocked in the process get come through? So is it just a case of wanting more people who don't normally vote absentee ballot to come through, have the chance to come through and their vote not being validated? Maybe that could be the reason. Or but you cannot deny that it's also open to people who would just sign the ballot and come through, um and just who did their darndest to match a signature, and because the standards are lower, that they got accepted. So you can't deny that that was a possibility. Is it widespread? That's something that they would have to prove. That's a case that they'll have to make. But you can't tell me that Trump, like, watching all of this go down isn't like, "They're trying to, like, take it from me." So, and you can't I don't think you can really blame people who voted for him for feeling this way as well. So, keep that in mind, and you can make those arguments and bring it up to people who are like, "Why are we going through all of this?" Because there's some fishy things that happen, some irregularities that make people question. There's poll watchers who were kind of denied their ability to see things. There were people who claim that ballots were backdated. There's people who claim that people didn't have, and that's another thing. People were filling in information for the or allegedly filling in information for the ballots, or entering like the whole like year of the 1900. I heard that they enter that because there's certain, if you enter in the wrong date, the ballot will be invalidated, but there are some dates that you can enter in that they'll accept. And so that's why if they didn't have the birth date or whatever, that they would enter that in. But I'm just kind of like, if the person who sent the ballot didn't have their birth date, then isn't that a red flag? Like, people, I guess, can forget or something, but that's isn't that odd? So, and I don't know if they go back and how they check that, or not, but I'm just saying these are questions that need to be asked, and hopefully all these things are being answered. But I've personally, and I see this personally, I've seen a lack of curiosity from the media about any of this. And personally, because I was at a press conference and they were not invested or interested in these things, and they'll debunk like some low hanging fruit or whatever, but some of the bigger questions they don't want to ask because they don't want to know the answer to, because they liked the outcome that they got. So I've been on here for a while now, so I'm gonna say again, if you guys enjoyed this or you like what I do, please, you can go to blacktnews.com. It's right there on the screen. And please, you can donate. You can, again, get this nifty of things that he did on the back, like the "you ain't black," the racial jungle comments, the 7-Eleven comment, the about the you can't go to the 7-Eleven without hearing a slight Indian accent. And what's so funny about that particular one is that I was like, obviously that's a joke, but Joe Biden goes, "No, I'm not joking." And he's still kind of smiling, but it's like, it's so funny that he's like, "No, I'm not joking." Um, Saying that African Americans don't have diverse thoughts, and some policies and other things that he's done. So it has a pretty long list on the back of the shirt if you want to get that. And there's other ones, and there'll be more to come. But if you can support, please support. This is something that I like to grow and expand upon. And I thank you to everyone that has given a gift and taken the time out to watch us and taken the time out to share. The video I did with Linda Lee yesterday got quite a bit of views, so I know you guys are sharing, and I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me talk about this stuff. Stay tuned because there are some things I'm going to break as far as news, and we'll cover, election activity as it goes on, and we learn a little bit more and as these court cases go through. But God bless you all, and thank you for joining me tonight.